Hi, Dr. Pat Mays, campus pastor at Laterno University here again, and I hate it. I hate getting sand on my hands or between my toes. Just creeps me out, quite frankly. But you know, grit has a place. As we've come to the end, or close to the end of the spring semester, the spring 2020, this odyssey that began in a normal way but has ended quite weirdly. I've been thinking about how we started the school year back in August of 2019. Do you remember August 2019? Seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? But on August 28th, that chapel, I spoke. And when I started, I came up, they raised the stage, we had smoke, we had music, Space Odyssey 2001, bum, bum, ba-da. And that day I spoke about grit. Not this kind of grit, but the kind of grit that we talk about when we are talking about people who in tough times, they are still able to get through it, to not just get through it, but to actually be effective and to have success. Well, we've had to put some of that to the test this semester. We really had to have some grit. So when we usually talk about grit, we talk about getting through during tough times, not just getting through, but actually being successful, being effective during tough times. Grit, some have said, is where passion and perseverance meet. And in that passion and perseverance, we're able to succeed even when times get tough. Paul talks about his own perseverance in 2 Corinthians 11. He talks about some of the tough times that he went through. These included things like being flogged, being exposed to death again and again. 3 times, he says, he was beaten with rods. Once he was pelted with stones. 3 times he was shipwrecked. He spent a night and a day in the open sea. He's constantly on the move, and he uses the word danger 5 times in a row. And he talks about being in danger, that in spite of this, he was able to get through. And he talks about that he was able to get through not because of his own power, but because he trusted in the power of Christ. So in 2 Corinthians 11, Paul introduces us to 3 words that refer to grit: passion, perseverance, and power. The passion to do what it was he was called to do, the perseverance to see it through, and getting his power by tapping into the power of Christ. I'm going to suggest there's one more word that begins with P that references grit, and that is presence. Maybe you recall that I told a story back in August about Janine Brabon. Janine Brabon was a missionary, a single woman who was called to serve in Colombia. And her goal, her ambition was to teach Greek, to help train pastors by teaching Greek in a seminary. But lo and behold, she got the opportunity to move out of the seminary classroom and begin a ministry in a jail. Now, it wasn't just any jail. It was the toughest jail in all of Medellin, Colombia, where the worst of the worst were housed: murderers, rapists, and it was controlled by the drug cartels of Colombia. And here she was, as a woman, going into a male prison to talk about Christ. And so she did. And people would ask her, how do you have the courage to do this? Because she went in and men began coming to Christ, and they formed a church in the middle of this jail there in Medellin, Colombia, among these men, the toughest, the worst of men. And here she was as a woman going in there. How, Janine, how did you have the bravery, the courage to go in there? She said, well, it's understanding what courage is. She says, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the presence of God. And so as we come to the end of this semester, I'm hoping that you will lean into the presence of God. Yes, we need passion, we need perseverance, and we need power. but our source is the presence of God. Here's what I know to be true. LeTourneau students are passionate, they persevere, they tap into the power of Christ, and they lean into the presence of God. I know that the end of this semester has been tough, but here's also what I know. I know that most of you, almost all of you, have shown grit, and you have pushed through and you've been successful. Now, I know, maybe it was a little hard, and hey, maybe you even whined a little bit. Hey, I whined a little bit myself. But it's not about the moment. It's about, as we go through these moments, did we practice the presence of God? Did we lean into it? Did we tap into the power of Christ? And did we keep hold of our passion and our perseverance? Well, I know that most of us did, including our faculty and staff. That's why LeTourneau is an amazing place. And that's why we have such rich resources, because we know that ultimately our resources aren't in ourselves. It's in the God that we serve.